Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming this morning to come and hear about the newest technology that we're about to implement at the City of West Palm Beach. I'd like to thank Commissioner Ryan and Mayor Moyo and City Administrator Jeff Green for being here, as they were very instrumental in helping us to get this project up and running. The City of West Palm Beach recently committed $1.2 million for the police department to establish a real-time crime center. The support of the mayor, city administration, and the commission has been instrumental in affording the police department the opportunity to obtain a number of new technologies that will allow us to conduct more precise crime prevention and enforcement activity throughout the city. By providing access to real-time crime data, it's our goal to improve our response times as well as enhance our investigative opportunities, which will lead to a reduction in violent crimes throughout the city. Our Real-Time Crime Center project has been led by Lieutenant Clifford Hagan. I'd like to acknowledge his work, as he's been working tirelessly to get this whole program up and running. Also, I'd like to recognize our IT department, led by the director, Christine Brevick, who has really been working hand in hand with our department on getting this working. Their guidance has been instrumental in making sure that we don't mess this up. There's a lot of technicalities to it that you don't normally assign to the police department, so we definitely need their partnership in this. Today we're specifically introducing the ShotSpotter system, which will be the first major component of the Real-Time Crime Center. It's a major crime-fighting technology that will be implemented initially. Hopefully next month you're going to hear a little bit more about it. We have some representatives from ShotSpotter that are going to do a brief presentation for you to give you the specifics on the program. The ShotSpotter technology uses a network of acoustic sensors to identify, locate, and alert police to incidents involving gunshots fired in certain areas of the city. The system will increase our ability to apprehend suspects, render aid more quickly to victims, locate witnesses, and obtain evidence that will be instrumental in us being successful towards prosecution on these cases. It's important to note that this technology does not replace our citizens. We need our citizens still to be witnesses for us. We need them to call 911 if they need us or if they hear something, so that they can be a part of this process also. Right now I'm pleased to introduce Al Lures and Phil Daly. Phil is actually going to come up. He's been working with us actually for a number of years on this project. We finally, with the support of the city, we've got it up and running to a degree. We're not live yet, but we're pretty close. But Phil can give you some of the technical answers on the situation or the program and how it runs. Thank you, Phil. It's all yours.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Wow, I'm really impressed by the number of people that are here today. Thank you so much for being here. Gun violence is a really complex problem that requires a comprehensive solution. So each one of you is really going to play a critical role in the success of this program. So thank you for being here. Real quick, in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to go quickly through our team's introductions. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about defining the problem of gun violence. What is gun violence really all about? The dynamics behind that. I'll provide a very short overview of ShotSpotter, and then we'll move to a second session that'll be led by my colleague Al Lures to talk a little bit about expected goals and outcomes and the other things on this agenda. So real quick, a little bit of introduction. So again, my name is Phil Daly. I'm the Southeast Director for ShotSpotter. I've been with the company for about 8 years. Over those last 8 years, I think is when I first started meeting with the City of West Palm Beach Police Department to talk about ShotSpotter. And I'm not sure what that says about me as a sales guy, that it took me over 8 years to close this deal, but I'm really excited that we're finally here. There's a little bit more background on myself. I'm a former police sergeant from Baltimore City. I served on various task forces targeting violent drug organizations. And so not only have I seen the impact of gun violence on a professional level, but as I've shared with some of you in the past, on a more personal level, I've seen the impact of gun violence through the loss of a childhood friend who was murdered in Washington, D.C. And so for me, what we do as a company in terms of enabling more responsive policing in vulnerable communities, I think providing a safer environment for law enforcement to respond to shooting incidents and improving the quality of life in these communities is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm glad to report that it's a passion that's really ingrained in the culture of our company. My colleague Al Lures is our Customer Success Director. Al is a former Assistant Chief of Miami Gardens Police Department. He was an early adopter of the ShotSpotter technology and developed a lot of innovative best practices around its use to really maximize its impact. And so Al's job here today is going to give you a little bit of an overview of what the customer success program looks like and some of those best practices and strategies. And he's going to be available to the police department on an ongoing basis for the life of the subscription to work with you to maximize the impact of the program. Our third colleague there, Kent McIntyre, couldn't be here today. He's the program manager. He's already been very hard at work, working very closely with Lieutenant Hagan. We're actually very close, based on the work that he's done, of deploying the program here. And I would just add as a side note, I think he may have done it in record time, and I think that's a lot of thanks to Lieutenant Hagan and the team here in enabling that. So let's talk a little bit about, set a little bit of context around the issue of gun violence. So what we now know today, based on national studies, is that it's a fraction of 1% of people who live in vulnerable communities that are responsible for over 74% of our shootings. So when we're talking about addressing gun violence, we're not talking about arresting hundreds of people. We're really talking about a very small number of individuals that we sometimes refer to as serial trigger pullers, who are responsible for most of the shootings. The other information that we know based on national studies is that some of the traditional police strategies to reduce gun violence, such as gun buyback program or throwing a wide net over the community with police saturation tactics, are not effective, they're costly, they're not sustainable, and they're often perceived by the community as over-aggressive policing. And so as we talk about ShotSpotter, we're really going to be talking about focused deterrence. We're going to be talking about getting very focused on that small percentage of individuals who are responsible for most of your shootings, or as one of our police chief put it, the metaphor that he used, is we're going to be talking about fishing for these shooters with a spear instead of a net. But let's start with what are some of the challenges, fundamental challenges that law enforcement faces in terms of addressing gun violence. And one of the key fundamental challenges is that nationwide, on the average, less than 20% of shootings are reported through 911. That means that 8 to 9 out of 10 times that somebody fires a gun in our most vulnerable communities, the police never show up simply because they don't know about it. In other words, most law enforcement agencies are working with an 80 to 90% deficiency in their intelligence. And you've heard the old adage, you can't manage what you can't measure. The other challenge is that when someone calls 911, there's typically a several-minute delay before they actually make the call. And unless they're an eyewitness to the event, they can only provide very vague information. And we've actually done some research on this, and what we found is that on the average, a 911 caller is off by about 780 feet. That means that to do an effective police response to shots fired calls for service, you'd have to canvass 200 to 300 addresses. And I can tell you that from a personal experience, that on a busy night, on a busy shift, that's simply never going to happen. And so under the 911 only model, the opportunity to identify suspects, witnesses, recover valuable evidence such as casings, or potentially get to the scene in time to give life-rendering aid to a victim who may be bleeding out, become extremely slim. And for the people who live in these communities and who hear the sound of gunfire day in and day out, and that lack of that precise, timely police response fuels negative perceptions about law enforcement. In these communities, gunfire has tragically become normalized, but it carries a heavy social, economic, and psychological impact. Children, as always, are especially vulnerable to gun violence. It impacts crucial areas of their brain, those dealing with learning, memory, and behavior control. And according to some researchers who've long studied these children, nearly a third of children who are exposed to violence will suffer from the same levels of post-traumatic stress that plague soldiers returning from war. Now, one of my colleagues, a very well-respected retired police chief, actually objects to the term post-traumatic stress because unlike soldiers who return home from war, these children are often placed right back in the environment where they were first traumatized. If I can personalize this just a little bit more, so through my work as a police officer in some of Baltimore's most vulnerable neighborhoods, and ongoing conversations I've had people over the last 8 years with people who live in these communities, I've gotten a little bit of a glimpse of what it's like to live in these neighborhoods. And oftentimes, people who live in these neighborhoods actually have protocols they follow when gunfire erupts, which typically consist of scrambling to get your kids to lay flat on the ground or get them to a safer place in the house, such as a bathtub. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that you're one of those parents raising children in that environment, and on a weekly, if not daily basis, you hear the sound of gunfire erupt outside your home. You follow your protocol, you scramble to get your kids to a safer place in the house, and when the gunfire subsides and you go peek out the window, rarely, if ever, do you see a police response. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think is the perception that would begin to form in your mind about law enforcement? And this is the part where it gets interactive. Any thoughts?
I think the police don't care.
They don't care. Exactly. It's not true, but that's the perception that's formed. And so the question we're going to talk about today is how can ShotSpotter not only help you prevent gun violence, but how can you also use it to build trust with the communities you serve, especially those most at risk? So what is ShotSpotter and how does it work? So if we had to describe in 3 short words what we do, there would be detect, protect, and connect. We detect gunfire within the target coverage area. We'll detect over 90% of gunfire that occurs within that coverage area. That enables a fast, precise, and consistent police response to these shooting incidents. That response has a dramatic deterrent impact and also disrupts the gun violence cycle. We help protect law enforcement by providing them really comprehensive ground truth in terms of the amount of gunfire that's occurring in the communities they patrol day in and day out. And we also provide them critical situational awareness when they're responding to specific incidents. And last but not least, we help law enforcement connect with these communities that they serve. And I want to pause here for just a moment and give you an example of what this looks like. In South Bend, Indiana, the South Bend Police Department developed the following initiative around a ShotSpotter response. When they get a ShotSpotter alert, the officers immediately respond to the area. It's a priority 1 call for service. They immediately respond. When the officers get to the scene, they get out of the vehicle, and the next thing they do is they secure the scene. And the next thing they do after that is they go then knock on the doors immediately around the alert location. And when people answer the door, they have a conversation that goes something like this. Good evening. Our system detected a shooting incident near your home. Are you okay? Is anyone hurt? When you have that kind of conversation consistently over time, it has a transformative impact on these communities and changes the perception towards law enforcement from one of a military occupying force, if you will, to one of guardians who are there to serve and protect them.
Tell us again where the money is coming from?
It actually, the city took it out of the sale of the old city hall, so it was proceeds from that sale.
How much is it costing the city to get this ShotSpotter tech implemented?
It's in conjunction with the rest of the Real-Time Crime Center. The whole project to get it off the ground is $1.2 million, but it's got a couple different parts of technology that will be implemented in addition to this. ShotSpotter is just the first part of it that we've got put together and ready to go.
Where does the crime rate stand right now in West Palm Beach with that real-time data? What are you observing right now?
Overall, the numbers are down, but it depends on which types of crimes. You can really drill down on which types of crimes you're looking at. The overall crime rate right now, though, is on a downward trend.
About 20%.
Yeah.
The last time we looked at it, it was about 20% down from last year at this time. And if you compare the 2007 data with now, it's about 20 to 25% down from 2007. Yeah, we're very excited about this potential. The Real-Time Crime Center is going to make us be able to respond quickly, let the folks who are living with this on a day-to-day basis know that we're there, and we'll be there right away to help and protect them. As Mr. Daly said, just to be able to respond that quickly is going to be a huge benefit for us.
Is there any thought to add, some of these systems come with crime cameras that activate as well whenever the ShotSpotter goes on? Is there any thought to add that later on down the line? Or?
Part of the overall plan for the Real-Time Crime Center is going to include some camera technology, license plate readers, some new software that's going to tie everything together. So yes, the idea is we're literally going to have a 24/7 center that should have a person in it 24/7 that's literally going to be able to monitor these different systems, tie them together, and by the push of a couple different buttons, be able to get that information into the field immediately.
So this is the first of what's going to be the real
Yes,
time? And when,
yes.
when is that expected to be completed?
Our Lieutenant Hagan, we're looking for the first of the year to have it all up and running, hopefully. Close? Three quarters of the way. This is going to be the first part that's going to be going, but we still need to do some build out and some other
Let's
purchases.
get it all up before April 1st so that I can be here to celebrate.
Yes, definitely by then. No, but it's an ongoing project that, like I said, this is probably about, this is almost half of the systems that we need, 2/3 maybe, but the rest of the things will tie in together to it. And that's the thing is, from the get-go, we're going to have the basics, and then we will be able to determine where we can build on the center itself to make sure that we're getting the most information in the most timely fashion so that we can be more efficient.